Good day, everyone. My name is Rudy Page, and I'm really pleased that I've got Beth Kay and Simon Phillips, and we'll be talking about the Healthy Neighbourhoods Programme, Haringey. Hi, Beth.
Hi, Rudy. Thank you for having us today. My name is Beth Kay. I'm the voluntary sector engagement lead at the Bridge Renewal Trust. Bridge are a community-based charity with the kind of aim of reducing health inequalities. We're also Haringey Council's strategic partner for the voluntary and community sector. Before working at Bridge, I've worked in Bradford, coordinating a telephone wellbeing and befriending service, and also done some kind of employment support work with refugees and asylum seekers to help them get jobs in the NHS. And most recently now I'm at Bridge Renewal Trust, working on the Healthy Neighbourhoods Programme with yourself, Rudy, and also Simon, who is the programme head of programme delivery at Bridge. So I'm going to just sort of talk you through the Healthy Neighbourhoods Programme today and some of the work that we've been doing. So the Healthy Neighbourhoods Programme is funded by the Inequalities Fund, commissioned by the NHS North Central London Integrated Care Board. So that covers Enfield, Haringey, Barnet, Camden and Islington. The programme takes a kind of partnership approach, and it aims to improve health outcomes for the most deprived wards in the area. So I operate in Haringey, that's where Bridge is based. So I'll talk about some of the work that we're doing in Haringey today. So if you look at the heat map on the screen here, the red areas have the highest levels of deprivation. And by deprivation, we mean things like lower levels of income, less resources, higher rates of poverty, things like that. So you can see if you look at Haringey sort of in the middle there, most of the red areas fall towards the east side of the borough. Places like White Hart Lane, Northumberland Park, West Green, Bruce Castle, and sort of Tottenham, Seven Sisters as well. So the Healthy Neighbourhoods Programme aims to co-design and co-deliver health and wellbeing initiatives to the most deprived areas in Haringey. So we're also focusing on increasing support for Black and minority ethnic backgrounds, and also for people where English is not their first language, because these areas and these people are experiencing worse health outcomes compared to other parts of the borough. What's sometimes described as kind of health inequalities. And Rudy, one of your other share the learning videos that I watched last week on kind of long-term health conditions, you were speaking with Dr. Julie Botticello and Dr. Patricia Smith, and they did a really good job of kind of describing what health inequalities means. So yeah, I'd urge people to watch that video if you want to kind of learn a bit more about that. But today I'll kind of talk a bit more about what health inequalities means in the context of this programme and some of the initiatives that's going on in Haringey. So basically right now in the east side of the borough, some people are dying years younger than they should be. And areas like poverty, poor quality housing, low pay, unstable jobs, all of these things are impacting people's physical and mental health. And when people don't have the things that they need for good health, like warm homes and good food, all of these things are causing people to constantly worry about making ends meet and putting a strain on their bodies and also their mental health. All of these things cause issues like stress, high blood pressure, weaker immune systems, and all of this can lead to unhealthy lifestyles. So basically what we really need to do is create the building blocks in society to have a kind of healthy society. So things like those stable jobs, the good pay, quality housing and education. These building blocks give people a solid frame to kind of withstand all of the other shocks that life can throw at you. So obviously those things aren't very easy to fix overnight. But one thing that the Healthy Neighbourhoods Programme does do is kind of recognise the important and vital role of the voluntary and community sector in trying to create and improve some of those building blocks so that people can have a healthier life, basically. So the programme itself, if we have a look, is basically made up of different health priority areas. So we'll start off with Healthy Start. So this includes things like tackling any kind of health issues at an early stage of development. So things like tackling childhood obesity, speech and language development through stay and play sessions. We also have an ABC Parents programme, which offers kind of life-saving and first aid support to kind of young parents or new parents and grandparents. We're also focusing on long-term health conditions. So this is things like through screening programs for COPD, cancer screening, self-management support, clinical groups that are offering roadshows throughout the community to help people have a higher uptake of some of these services. And yeah, we also have cancer champions, which support people with screenings in Turkish Cypriot communities, French, Italian, and Afro-Caribbean communities as well. So the fourth focus is on improving mental well-being. So this is through programs such as Tottenham Talking, who are a kind of community mental health service. They do lots of different activities and creative therapies. And we also have a Somali mental health project in conjunction with RISE projects in Haringey, and also lots of collaborations with Mind in Haringey, who are a big mental health charity. So the fifth area of focus is supporting vulnerable groups. So this is things like people with sickle cell disorders, which is again more common among Black, Asian and minority backgrounds, and also people with kind of more multiple and complex needs. So I've saved number one until last because this is the kind of project that myself and Simon are working on with yourself, Rudy, as well. So this is a kind of overarching or cross-cutting theme that supports all of the different health areas. So it's called Empowering Local People and Co-Production. So this theme basically recognises that residents, patients, the local voluntary and community sector all play quite an essential role in understanding and influencing health in all of these different areas. And it also kind of aligns with the NHS long-term plan to make sure that the voluntary and community sector supports what they do. So it recognises also that people with lived experience need to be a big part of the discussion around health and in co-designing those health initiatives with other statutory partners. And it kind of does away with the concept of hard to reach communities by saying kind of, well, actually, within these minority ethnic communities in Haringey, people are very well connected. They live, they eat, they work, they play in certain areas. They have trusted and well-connected individuals within their communities. So they're not necessarily hard to reach. It's just that you're not necessarily looking in the right places or you're not engaging people in the right ways. So this project aims to kind of do better at engaging people and supporting people to do that as well, which also means then giving people the right tools or capacity to be able to actually participate on some of those discussions, kind of recognizing that we're not all starting from the same level playing field and that we need to build that capacity to allow other people to be involved in decision making around community health. So basically, overall, there's a bit of a need to rebalance the power that's needed to increase participation around community health, and a bit of a movement away from those top-down commissioning initiatives with more of a kind of co-production approach. So we can look a little bit more about what co-production actually means. So there's a little quote here that says, co-production is not just a word, it's not just a concept, it's the meeting of minds coming together to find shared solutions. And this here is a kind of ladder of participation. So it outlines the kind of various ways in which residents and the VCS can be involved in service design and delivery, and the kind of decision making that's needed at different levels with residents and communities. So the ladder kind of holds the assumption that we're working towards the top, like that's the ideal situation, that top bracket there. So co-production and co-design by doing with in an equal and reciprocal partnership. So then we can have a think about who is it that we're wanting to do co-production with. And we have here the co-production triangle, which is kind of a visual way of having a look at how we're going to be doing this partnership work and how we're going to be working with other people. So we have residents, we have our statutory partners, such as the local NHS and also the council. And then we've got the voluntary and community sector, and also more importantly, the kind of grassroots VCS, who have a big influence, but not always the biggest seat at the table. So in the pink kind of section at the top, we've got the residents. So that could be people with lived experiences of health issues, or just generally people that live and work in the area. And it's about creating platforms for those people to exercise their agency, achieve their own goals, and build their own capabilities and assets within the community. In the green corner at the bottom, we have statutory partners. So again, this could be kind of commissioners at the top making big decisions. This could be clinical teams that are delivering health initiatives on the ground. But there needs to be both proactive and responsive kind of work within the statutory sector. So doing with and not doing to our communities is kind of the big focus there. And to develop accessible services that are fit for purpose, as they have a statutory duty to do so. And then in the orange section towards the bottom, we have our voluntary and community sector. So this is, people that can provide expertise and advice. They have a good knowledge and relationship with people and residents within our community. And they often offer services that are designed with the groups that they have and they support in mind. And they can kind of offer engagement often at the right level that kind of speaks to the community well. Yes, so a big part of empowering local people through co-production is better working within this triangle. And, each part is kind of equally important. So yeah, we're wanting to build better relationships with these three kind of key stakeholder areas. So in this program, we're working with different people and different groups within the voluntary and community sector. So I'll just kind of go through some of our key partners that have got a kind of key role in the work that we're doing. So first of all, we've got Dalmar Heritage and Family Development. So they support Somali people in Haringey. We're also working with HOPEC. So they offer advice on immigration, signposting, translation services within the kind of Polish and wider European communities. We're also working with Community Cookup, who are based at Northumberland Park. They offer weekly drop-ins, hot meals, a food bank, and wellbeing activities. We're working with Sewn Together. So they're part of a wider group called Gold and Silver Enterprises. And they offer a lot of empowerment through creative activities and events. And Rudy, you got a little feature here, obviously working with yourself as well. You offer a lot of expertise with sort of systems change and policy implementation and helping community groups to kind of communicate key messages, as well as working in kind of community clusters around long-term health, which I think we might touch on a little bit later. We're also working with the TCCA, so they are the Turkish Cypriot Community Association in Haringey. They do a lot of health and wellbeing initiatives, and they've got a wide reach within Haringey. And we're working with You versus You. So they are a sort of community group that support young people, a lot of refugees and migrants. They do a lot of work around mental health, sports and mentoring. So yeah, we've been working with these groups across the programme on a range of different initiatives. We're looking to build a framework around co-production and how people want to do co-production at a grassroots level. So if we think about the programme more broadly, we've got all of these different health initiatives that the kind of NHS have recognised as a key priority. But then we also have all these great voluntary and community sector groups that have a good reach within their communities. And we're trying to basically create better links so that these groups can feed into health priorities, but also being able to develop their own capacity building so that they can support on these initiatives a little bit better. And this kind of collaborative working and learning also aims to help grassroots groups to design their own health and wellbeing initiatives, and also build better relationships with statutory partners. So that's the kind of general aim of what the programme is trying to achieve. I'll now just talk briefly about some of the activities that we've been doing, or what you might call co-production in action. So co-production isn't really a one size fits all. Every group is different, every activity is different, every aim is different. It's sort of like, what are you doing co-production with, or what are you trying to co-produce? So one example is that we facilitated a collaboration between the ABC Parents Programme and HOPEC, who are the grassroots community group supporting Polish people. So at one of HOPEC's workshops that was attended by mothers and grandmothers and some expectant mothers, we basically had a health visitor from the ABC Parents Programme come along to promote and to do outreach and to explain a bit more about what they do. And there was a translator present, and they asked HOPEC and their group if they had any kind of culturally specific needs or requests. As a result, the ABC Parents Programme have now created a first aid session that's going to have a Polish interpreter present, and they've tailored it to the needs of that group based on that discussion. So another example of co-production in action, we did a workshop with VCS grassroots groups to understand what co-production of health and wellbeing initiatives means at a grassroots level. So this is helping to co-design our toolkit, which should be available in a few months. And it explored the kind of value of multiple and sometimes overlooked viewpoints and the importance of that kind of user-led design. We've also recently co-delivered a Women's Healthy Neighbourhoods event, which has brought together statutory services, the local NHS and the local VCS, and also residents. So the aim here was to sort of empower women through inspirational speakers. Lots of people told their stories of their personal health journeys. Some had gone through severe mental illness. Some had overcome cancer. And some were also talking about challenges and barriers that they faced into employment. But this was a space for people to have their say about health and wellness in their neighbourhoods, and also to do some kind of community mapping activities, and also just to get together and network and meet other like-minded women. So another key priority of this programme, as I mentioned, is this capacity building element within the VCS. So we've spoken to the VCS groups and asked them what they kind of would like, or what they've identified as areas where they want to build assets and strengthen their skills and expertise. And also, how can we connect VCS groups to one another, where they might be able to help and support and co-deliver initiatives with each other. And also the kind of aim to help them design their own accessible and inclusive services. So one of the things that came up was safeguarding was an area that people wanted more kind of information and knowledge on. So we developed a training schedule. Safeguarding was our first training that we did last week. This is a photo from the session with the groups that attended. And we've got lots of other training coming up, things from staff wellbeing, mental health first aider training, but also kind of more creative and practical training sessions around photography workshops and kind of project management and things like that. So that's where we are now. I will stop sharing my screen. It was a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but I don't know if you have any kind of questions or comments, Rudy.
Thank you very much. Extremely comprehensive, and as you alluded to, some of the work that we've been doing around the long-term conditions clusters really does feed into what you've laid out there. And I think what we've done as well is look at some of the key areas around blood disorders, which of course is sickle cell anemia, particularly in the African and Caribbean population groups. But there's also HTLV1 as well. And so what we're trying to do is widen the community sort of involvement within the various areas of the conditions. So drilling down into the community really. And the cancers, of course, which is another big area. Prostate, particularly as it relates to men, of course. But there's diabetes, mental health, and also just healthy lifestyles, which you did touch on earlier on, and community well-being in itself. For us, it's, well, what do people say that will make them feel better in their neighbourhoods, and that's where we kind of link with the broader community renewal programs of being able to live in a peaceful, caring, and enterprising neighbourhood, access to all the services, whether they be statutory or the private sector, because we think the private sector providers are important when it comes to community wellbeing. See a lot more shops, healthy restaurants want to get involved, providing healthy meals. So we want to bring those into the discussion as well. And it fits very much with your co-design, co-production approach. And also we're now thinking about the whole co-commissioning as well, because obviously there is a commissioning impact on communities. And I think if communities better understood the role of commissioning and what commissioners are actually thinking about, and they can have a say and provide feedback on that type of commissioning, I think that will again feed in neatly into the co-production and the co-design activities that you laid out earlier on. And another important aspect of the work that we're doing with the long-term condition clusters, we're also saying it's important there's a shared understanding within the communities about collective responsibility when it comes to self-care, self-management, prevention. And we're saying to the communities, what's worked, what's working, and let's share that across the community as well for the benefit of all. And of course, with this work that we're doing in Haringey means it can go to all communities. And that's the great thing about the Healthy Neighbourhoods. It's about sharing the best from all communities, regardless of background, culture, or status, which I think is really important. So, and then final point in there, and you touched on the trusted messengers. So everybody can be reached. You know, there are networks all over the borough, which is good. And this program does connect into some of those wider communication networks, because as we're saying, the means of communication may be different, but the needs are the same. So it's important for us to connect in to some of the directories. There's lots of online directories now, lots of WhatsApp groups, Facebook groups, that we really need to ensure that this content appears in those. And of course leads back to Bridge Renewal Trust, who can then reshare it and, you know, give people the opportunity to get involved. So Simon, any thoughts around?
I just have one question for you, Beth, which was about how the people that have been involved from the communities you've worked with, how have you, rewarded them, or, given anything back to them, how, to encourage them to be part of these groups?
Yeah, I think it's an important question, because there needs to be appropriate levels of kind of reward for contributing at different levels. And that might look slightly differently for different people. So whether it's like financial support to attend some of our sessions, we're able to offer a kind of, a contribution there. Sometimes it's in the form of gift cards, especially if people with benefits payment might affect that. So we can offer gift cards as well. And yeah, so it's kind of recognizing that people want to naturally support their communities and be involved in some of these sessions, but always important to be able to offer that kind of financial support to be able to participate.
That's a really good question, Simon, because the feedback I've had from people, Beth, they've really respected that. The fact that some incentive has been offered to them, which, as you know, is not always the case when it comes down to, again, to that community, grassroots, neighbourhood level. So people have been pleased about that and more willing to get involved, because it's the principle, it's not the amount, it's the principle. So thanks for that. So Beth, what's next for Healthy Neighbourhoods Programme?
So we have a few kind of events coming up, some things planned, including a Healthy Neighbourhoods co-production conference, which we're hoping to host towards the end of May. So we'll have different elements of that co-production triangle. So we'll have some of our statutory services and also our VCS groups and residents as well. And we're going to be continuing to do some of this capacity building training based on the schedule that we've co-designed with the groups. So we have some training sessions coming up. We're also going to be doing some more kind of partnership working in the clusters, like you mentioned, Rudy. And partly to do that, we're going to be doing some community mapping as well, so that we can really tap into those local assets and cultural assets within our community. We're also going to help our VCS groups apply for funding so that they can sustain what they do and have, better financial means to be involved in some of these initiatives. So funding such as Community Chest and other kind of local funding initiatives, we're going to support with applications for that. We've also got a VCS forum coming up at the NRC, which is the Northumberland Park Resource Centre. So it'll be a new space for the VCS to gather and to kind of network and to also have a look at what statutory council services are taking place there. And that's pretty much it, actually. That's what we've got lined up.
Great. Simon, can you tell us a bit about your experience around co-production in action, with Mind and St Mungo's charities?
Yeah, of course, Rudy. Yeah. I thought before I get on to the examples, I've got a couple of examples from there that follow on from some of the stuff that Beth's talked about. It's just how I've approached looking at co-production, and I think, as Beth said, it's about it's a mindset. It's about how you view your service, or the service you're working within. So I've always taken the view that any service has a number of stakeholders. There's a funder, there's a management team, there's a delivery team, and there's, of course, the people who receive or are benefiting from the service in some way. And each of those has a crucial role to play in the success of the service. If you take away the funder, well, you haven't got any money. You can't run your service. If you take away the people delivering it, there's no one there to do that work. If you take away the people receiving the service, you have a bunch of people sitting around with money and a good idea, but no one to do it with. So they're absolutely crucial to the success of that service, is anybody who's a participant in it. And I think it's really important that each of those groups have an equality. An equality of voice, and in how the service is run, in saying how the service is run, and it very much includes the people with lived experience there. The key thing there, I think, is that over time, the if you like, the balance of power around that table, the funder, the manager, the delivery service, and those receiving it, is slightly skewed, and that's I'm being conservative in my language there, but I think it's slightly skewed more towards the funder and the managers, and I think co-production is about rebalancing the power, and that's how my take on it and how I view it, and that's not a straightforward and easy thing to do, and everybody there will find areas that are beneficial and easy to do, and there's other things where it's going to be more difficult for them. People who are using a service are quite often unused to the processes of funding and management and those things that go on in the background. They're not aware of how to do it. They may not be comfortable in those positions. You need to be careful with that. But it is also about the people who've got the power, how we help them learn to share it, because that can be a difficult thing if you've it's no fault of those people. If you're used to making a decision and that happens, to suddenly have to share that decision a little bit more can be a difficult thing to do. So I think there's learning on all sides about how we approach this. But I think there's also some really important key things to bear in mind when you're working with a group of people who have a lived experience of whatever issue your service is tackling. Is it representative of that group? Has your service become focused on a particular group of people within that target group, or is it broad enough to actually be representative? Are you looking at some of the people who you maybe want to be using the service but are not using the service? Are you including them in that, because they're a key part of finding out how best to run your service? And also step back a little bit and look at the systems and look at the processes that you've got, and are you excluding people, or are they slightly skewed as well? Have over time they become too Have they become, favour certain people and certain stakeholders and the way they like to work? When I give the example of the St Mungo's example, I think that'll bring that more into play, what I mean there. And then I think, as we touched on with Beth earlier on, and yourself, Rudy, about reciprocity. If we're asking people, a lot of the people there are being paid to do a job, so that's what they're getting back from it. There's obviously other things as well, but that's a key part of it. When it comes to working with people lived experience and including them in the design and the delivery and evaluation of services, so we said that there needs to be this reciprocity. We need to be giving something back, which could be vouchers, it could be money. As you said, there's issues around benefits and things like that, but it's a chance to be broad and creative and to actually include the people there as well. It may be just a meal for everyone, a trip out somewhere, some training, some other kind of sort of experience or activity that the group of people would be happy to engage in. And I think it's being understood, and never underestimate a simple thank you and some praise. Thank you for doing that. That was a really good job. We couldn't have done it without you. Actually, is reciprocity, and it's the best starting point from that as well. So to give you a couple of examples, picked out two that I think that sort of at different levels. So when I was at St Mungo's, I was involved in setting up what was the client involvement board. So we had a client involvement team, and then we set up a client involvement board. The St Mungo's had an executive board that met, which was the CEO and the executive directors, and they would discuss things around governance and strategy of the organisation, and how could we involve clients at St Mungo's at every level of the work we were doing there. And that was the top level. That's where the big decisions are made. The overall strategy of the organization is made there. And how can we involve clients? It's a very difficult thing to just put one person into that situation. They may not be used to working at that level. There's an awful lot of things to read and understand. It's not an easy place to just put somebody in there who has an experience of homelessness and say, here you go, be part of this board. It can also be a bit sort of tokenistic and patronizing. So what we did is we set up a completely separate board. And as staff, we were shared all the information, all the paperwork that was going to be discussed by the executive board at St Mungo's was shared with the client involvement board, but we were able to go through it with them, help them understand it. And so there was a much clearer idea. And then from there, representatives from each board would get together to discuss the decisions that were made or to get some feedback on things. And it was a much easier, much better way for the clients to be involved, and a far more productive way for them to be involved at that level. And I think that's a way of looking at it. But the key thing there was making sure that we weren't, the processes that exist around an executive board at St Mungo's are there to benefit the kind of people who are used to being on those boards. And if you're not used to being in that, you're at a huge disadvantage. And so you really have to bear all of that in mind when you're trying to create something that's going to have a genuine voice and be able to influence those strategic decisions there. And then bringing it down, when I was at Mind in Tower Hamlets, on a much smaller level, this grew actually from a group of clients that came to me, and they said it was they found the website very confusing, and one of the things that they particularly looked at was how to register the service. Registered with the service, to give their name to somebody, so they could say, well, yeah, I'd quite like to use some of the services that you've got there. It wasn't an easy or straightforward thing to do on the website. And in fact, one of them just gave up and had to phone up to find out what to do. So we sat down, and I got a little group of clients together, the three that came to me in the first place, plus a couple of others. We got the comms staff in, we got a website designer in, we got a representative from the management team in, myself as co-production manager came in, and we looked at all the way through it. We came up with an idea about how we could deal with this, and sort of testing out the website, make some changes to it, test it again, and made some key changes and made it much easier to see how you could register for the site. It's still on the site, and I was really pleased that we had I think it was about a 30 to 40% increase in the number of people registering to the service in the months directly afterwards, and that maintained after that increase in the number of people registering via the website increased, and so it proved that it really was a key thing and it had worked. What was important there was it was about getting everybody together and understanding, looking at the website. It had been designed from the point of view of management. They had seen it as a tool to let people know about their charity. They hadn't seen it as a tool that somebody might use to register or to get information about the service, who wanted to use the service. And so just by sitting people in the same room and talking to each other and hearing what they had to say and their experiences, backing it up with some testing that we did, all of this, the clients that were involved in this, no one got paid for it. We did some things around time credits and stuff like that, where people were allowed to exchange that for trips to the cinema and stuff like that. But it was that sense of being able to use their skills. And one of the people who was there had actually been a website. She used to do copywriting for websites. She'd had a very bad experience and ended up being, using the services at Mind. But she was so pleased. She just said, it's really nice for me to be able to use the skills that I've got to be able to share them with you and to be able to be part of that. And I think that for me was coming back to that reciprocity. It was her being able to, having skills that she knew she had, and having the confidence and the ability to use the skills was all she wanted from that. And I think that was a key thing.
Great, thanks for that,
Simon. I don't know if you've got questions about any of that. I'm happy to answer.
No, that's a great point. But also, most importantly, is from a system point of view, is acting on the feedback from those people with the lived experience. Because, of course, sometimes that can be some of the greatest challenges, that it comes into the system, and and being able to demonstrate that we've acted and there's going to be some change. So that's really good.
I think that's actually key to it. And what the other point I would make about that is involve people in the solution.
Yeah.
Because they have the skills, they have the assets. Even if it is just having that lived experience, that's an asset. But they will have other skills. But if you're involving the person in the solution and they're part of the action, that in itself is so rewarding to that person. It's sort of moving away from that sort of you said we did mindset to we said we did.
Yeah.
It's all of us together here.
Absolutely. Beth, is there anything that you'd like to comment on what the overview that Simon's just given us?
Yeah, no, just I agree with what you're sort of saying there, and moving away from that just sort of consultation or that constantly asking for people's skills from their lived experience, but yeah, making sure you build that into, well, then what's next and how can we work together to actually design the solutions that fit that information. But yeah, no, there were some really good examples, Simon. Thanks.
Right, as we come to the end, Beth, if people want to get involved, how do they contact Bridge Renewal Trust? Is there a particular process?
Yeah, so you can find more information on the Bridge Renewal Trust website. You can just, search for the website on Google. And if you look for the Healthy Neighbourhoods Programme, there's some more information on the website there.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that. And good day.
Thanks, Rudy.
Thank you, Rudy.